Incredible transformation, billionaire discovers life-changing truth after son's 12-hour unconscious state. Jake Donovan stood outside his son's hospital room, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like an ominous warning. His heart raced, each thud echoing doubts he'd buried beneath layers of wealth. He was a self-made billionaire, the very definition of the American dream: fast cars, lavish parties, and an empire built on ambition. But none of that mattered now. Samuel lay unconscious inside, and Jake felt an ache deep in his chest, a hollow reminder of what he had sacrificed. Just hours earlier, Samuel had been volunteering at the local community center, an act of kindness that had led to heartbreak. It was the kind of place Jake had neglected, too wrapped up in business meetings and high-speed deals. Jake shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his polished shoes scuffing against the sterile linoleum floor. How had he let things get so out of hand? The memories flooded back: the simple family dinners, laughter over home-cooked meals, the warmth of being together. Everything felt like a dream now, drowning beneath the weight of his success. Around him, the bustling hospital was a stark contrast to the wealth that defined Jake's world. The murmurs of concerned families seemed to seep into his bones. He thought of Eric, his brother, still running their family bakery in their hometown, struggling as the economy shifted. Those once cherished Saturdays spent baking pastries felt like fading echoes of a time when he believed in the dignity of service, a belief lost in his relentless quest for more. In those dark hours, as he stared at Samuel's pale face, Jake wrestled with the truth about his own life choices. The lavish parties, the menacing pressure from Wall Street, it all spiraled into a lifestyle that felt empty. Wealth without purpose was merely a gilded cage, and he was trapped inside it. He clutched his phone, contemplating outreach programs for struggling businesses, even veterans looking for help. Maybe he could fix this. Once Samuel woke up. As the night stretched on, Jake began sketching ideas on a napkin, reminding himself of the joy from years past: productivity born from community, the warmth of helping others. Just as hope flickered, Samuel stirred. The moment electrified the air. Jake's breath caught in his throat. His son's eyes opened, but there was a heaviness in the room. Samuel's first words pierced the silence, a confession of feelings bottled up over the years. "Dad, I don't understand you anymore." A tight silence filled the air, punctuated only by the beeping of the machines. The weight of those words crashed into Jake, urging him to face the reality of their fractured relationship. Was ambition worth this cost? Could he grasp the strands of family he'd let slip away? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake locked eyes with Samuel, uncertainty clouding their intimate space. He felt the bittersweet tension mount. Love, forgiveness, and purpose hung in the balance. Would he relinquish his towering ambition for the sake of their family? Time ticked away, holding Jake at the precipice of transformation, but the answer was still cloaked in layers of fear and regret. What would he choose with his son's fragile heart weighing against the fortress of his empire? Jake's heart raced, as if trying to escape the confines of his chest. The soft beeping of the machines around him was like a countdown, each sound a reminder of the moment hanging in the air. With his son's words echoing in his mind, he leaned closer, desperate to bridge the emotional chasm between them. "What don't you understand, Sam?" Jake asked. His voice was thick, raw with emotion, unsure of how to articulate the labyrinth of feelings within him. Samuel, still bleary from sleep, searched his father's eyes. "You're never here, Dad. It's always about work, money. You've changed." Those words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the barriers Jake had built around himself. Silence swallowed Jake whole as he absorbed this painful truth. This wasn't just about the hours he spent at the office or the deals that kept him absently scrolling through his phone during family dinners. It was about the life he had crafted, one where ambition often overshadowed love and connection. Jake had always believed he was doing it for them, providing the best was how he showed love. But standing here, watching his son's confused gaze, he wondered if perhaps he had wrapped his affection in dollar bills. There had to be more. The cold hospital room felt like a confessional, every sterile corner holding reflections of Jake's past choices, a past that suddenly felt hauntingly empty. The years of sidelining his family had added up to a currency of emotion and trust, both depleted. Samuel, Jake paused, feeling a lump rise. I thought success would make everything better for us. I wanted to give you opportunities, a life where you wouldn't have to struggle, but I'm struggling, Dad. Just not in the way you think. Jake struggled to swallow the truth. The plea in Samuel's voice was clear. It wasn't about things. It was about presence, about being seen. In that moment, the weight of silence shifted again, and the air crackled with an unnameable tension that demanded change. Maybe I've been lost, Jake admitted, his voice breaking slightly. I've focused so hard on building this empire that I forgot to build a life with you. I'm ready to change. I want to understand you again. Samuel's blue eyes softened, but the hurt was still there. Can you really? You always seemed so happy in that other world. I thought I was, Jake replied. But I've only just realized that happiness isn't measured by bank accounts or status. It's in moments like this, with you. The transformation shimmered in the space between them, a fragile flicker of hope. Perhaps it wasn't too late to reclaim what mattered. For the first time in years, Jake caught a glimpse of purpose beyond profit. Samuel took a deep breath, processing what his father had said. If you want to change, start by being here now. With me. Jake nodded, tears welling in his eyes. He reached out and took Samuel's hand, an anchor in that whirlwind of emotions. It felt small, yet powerful, a connection that spoke of new beginnings. As they shared that moment, the doors to the room opened, and a nurse stepped in, breaking their concentration. Mr. Donovan, we need to perform some tests, she said, her professional demeanor stark against their silent revelation. Jake reluctantly released Samuel's hand, but as he stepped back, the resolve in his heart grew stronger. This was not the end, but rather the beginning of a new path. The thought of reaching out to Eric, of mending family ties, bubbled up in his mind. What was next? The possibilities seemed endless. But in that moment, all that mattered was understanding his son's heart. As the door clicked shut behind the nurse, Jake's thoughts raced. Could he truly transform his life, prioritizing family over fortune? In the corridor, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his mind. Would Samuel accept this newfound commitment? Would they ever heal the wounds of the past? The questions loomed heavily as he stood at the edge of a reality that demanded he take action, and soon. Jake stood in the stark hospital corridor, his hands trembling slightly as he leaned against the cool wall. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled his nostrils, but the emotions swirling inside him were anything but clean. The weight of Samuel's words felt like an anchor, keeping him tethered to a reality he had long been avoiding. He watched as the nurse vanished down the hallway, her voice trailing off like a gentle reminder that time was slipping by. He hadn't meant to lose sight of what truly mattered. Yet here he was, at the intersection of everything he valued. Samuel's small, warm hand was still freshly imprinted in his mind. It was that connection he had taken for granted, and the familiarity now felt achingly distant. Jake let out a shaky breath, the tightness in his chest making it difficult to inhale deeply. "Hey, Dad." A voice jolted him from his thoughts. It was Eric, his younger brother, rushing toward him with worry etched on his face. "I just heard. How's Sam?" Jake noticed the concern in Eric's eyes, a reflection of the complicated family dynamics that had long defined their relationship. Jake swallowed hard. He's just struggling a little. But I think I finally understand what he needs. Eric raised an eyebrow. Really? After all this time? There was a hint of skepticism in his tone, and Jake could hardly blame him. Years of chasing after success had created a gulf between them. Listen, it's not too late, right? You can still fix this. Jake shook his head, grappling with a mixture of hope and doubt. I mean, I want to. But it's going to take more than just words. I have to show him I care. What are you planning? Eric leaned closer, his voice softening as he seemed to sense his brother's vulnerability. I'm going to start by being here. Truly. Not just physically present, but emotionally available. He needs to know he's not alone in this, Jake said, feeling more convicted with each word. The thought of being truly present felt monumental. Could he step away from his demanding life, from the head-spinning meetings and endless emails? He had spent years building a fortress around himself made of wealth and ambition. Now, he was learning that those walls only isolated him further. Look, Jake, Eric said, breaking Jake's reverie. You might think you can just change overnight, but trust me, it'll take time. You might stumble. Then I'll stumble. But I won't stop trying. I can't, Jake insisted, determination flaring in his chest. Samuel deserves more than what I have given him. Good, Eric said with a nod. 'Cause it won't be easy. But it sounds like you're ready to put in the work. And you've got me to help you. Jake felt a warmth pooling in his heart. It was a comforting reminder that he wasn't undertaking this journey alone. They could reforge their family connections, stitch together the frayed pieces of their bond. As they shared that silent pledge of support, Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from Samuel's doctor. A simple notification, visit important. Panic surged through Jake. I need to get back to him, he said urgently, pushing off the wall. Eric fell in step beside him, mirroring Jake's quickening pace. Talk to him, Jake, Eric urged softly. Be patient with yourself. And with him. Jake nodded, his heart thudding in his chest. With each step toward Samuel's room, he felt a rush of hope mingled with fear. It was the unknown that lay ahead, ripe with possibility, that both terrified and excited him. As they reached the door, Jake hesitated. A thought struck him just then: what if this moment was a turning point? What if, together, they could rewrite the narrative of their lives? Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. Inside, Samuel lay there, the machines quietly beeping. A world of unspoken words hovered between them. Jake hesitated just a moment, summoning his courage. Sam, we need to talk, he began, the intensity of resolve now fueling his voice, but just as Jake opened his mouth to continue, the doctor entered, her expression unreadable, carrying a file that felt thick with implications. Mr. Donovan, there's something we need to discuss about Samuel's condition. In that instant, uncertainty crashed over him like a wave, sweeping away the moment of clarity he had just found. Would they be able to confront the truth together? Would it change everything? Jake felt his heart race as the doctor stepped into the room, her face serious and eyes darting between him and Samuel. The rhythmic beeping of the machines suddenly felt suffocating, as if each sound measured the minutes of his son's life. Please, sit down, she instructed softly, gesturing to a chair beside the bed. The words hung heavy in the air, urging Jake to comply. He sank into the seat, feeling its coldness seep through his clothes. Samuel's situation is complicated, she began, her voice steady but filled with an underlying weight. We need to discuss some options for his treatment. There have been changes in his condition. Jake's throat tightened. What kind of changes? The question caught in his throat, but he pressed on, compelled by a rush of parental instinct. The doctor exhaled slowly, as if preparing for a long dive into the depths of uncertainty. His current therapy isn't responding as we had hoped. We need to consider alternative treatments. Some of them come with risks, but they also hold potential for a breakthrough. Eric stood at the door, watching intently. Jake could feel his brother's presence, a steady source of support, but he struggled to focus on Samuel, the boy he had taken for granted for far too long. "What are the chances?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Every decision has its risks, Mr. Donovan. While some treatments may offer a chance of improvement, others could worsen his situation." She glanced at Samuel, who looked so small and fragile beneath the sheets. Jake gripped the armrest of the chair, fighting against the urge to retreat into denial, away from the impossible choices laid before him. "What do you think is best?" he asked finally, desperation lacing his tone. "I can't make that decision for you," she replied gently, her gaze unwavering. "It's crucial that you consider not just the potential outcomes but also Samuel's quality of life. What he may want. This is a shared journey, and we need to take these steps together." Jake felt tears stinging the corners of his eyes. He turned to Samuel, whose eyes fluttered open, looking at his father with a mix of confusion and trust. "Dad?" Samuel's voice was weak, barely above a whisper, but it shattered Jake's heart. "Is everything okay?" Jake fought to hold back the tide of emotions rising within him. His son needed him there, not drowning in his own fears. "It's going to be okay, Sam," he managed, his own voice wavering. "We'll figure this out together. I promise." Samuel smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Jake could see the worry lingering there, a mirror to his own. "Please, Dad. Just stay with me," Samuel said, and Jake felt the gravity of his words pulling him closer. The doctor stepped back, granting them a moment of privacy but leaving behind her heavy words. Jake wanted to hold Samuel's hand, to bridge the gap he had let widen for too long, but the reality of their situation loomed large. "Sam, I know I haven't always been here, but things are going to change. I want us to face this together," Jake vowed, his resolve hardening. The urgency to transform his life and fight for Samuel surged deep within him. Eric moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. "You can do this, Jake. You're not alone anymore." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the warmth spreading from his brother's hand into his heart. Together, they would tackle whatever uncertainty lay ahead. Just then, the machines beeped erratically, a twist in the rhythm that sent alarms ringing in Jake's ears. A nurse rushed into the room. "Samuel needs immediate attention," she shouted as the medical staff burst in. Jake's heart dropped, a sense of dread creeping back in. It was moments like this that would redefine everything. But as he watched Samuel being surrounded by a flurry of activity, he felt an ember of hope flicker. If there was any chance to rewrite their story, he would fight for it. And as the chaos unfolded before him, he thought, what if this was the moment that defined not just Samuel's fight but the rebirth of their bond? As the room filled with people and urgency, the true battle for connection was just beginning. The chaos in the room intensified. Jake felt as though the walls were closing in on him, the quick movements of the medical staff swirling like a storm around them. He stood frozen, his heart pounding in response to the beeping machines and the hurried discussions taking place. Each second felt like an eternity as he watched the doctors work diligently to stabilize Samuel. "Over here, start the 4." One of the nurses yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. Jake's world narrowed to just Samuel, where the small figure in the bed lay surrounded by worried faces. He had to do something, standing there wasn't enough. So, he stepped forward, squeezing past the medical staff, desperate for any connection with his son. "Sam. I'm right here," he called out, forcing his way into Samuel's line of sight. The boy's eyes flickered towards him, a glint of recognition igniting amidst the worry. "Dad," Samuel whispered, his voice barely audible over the organized frenzy. Jake took a deep breath, trying to transmit every ounce of love he felt into his words. "You keep fighting, okay? Just hold on for a little longer." I need you to be strong for me, he managed, and the sincerity pushed the lump in his throat aside, if only for a moment. Just then, the doctor turned her attention toward Jake. We're trying to stabilize him. I need you to step back, she said, urgency in her tone. Words that in any other context would drive him away from his son felt like nails in his heart. Just let me stay, he insisted, not wanting to be separated from the boy who needed him most. I don't want him to be alone. Her gaze softened, and she nodded just slightly. Okay, but stay back. We'll need you in a moment. You can hold his hand when he is stable. Jake didn't want to obey, but deep down he understood. For now, he had to trust the professionals. He felt his brother's hand squeeze his shoulder again, grounding him. As the minutes ticked by, tension thickened the air. Jake's mind spiraled through 1,000 thoughts, the good memories, the moments of joy, and regrets. The guilt sat heavy on his chest. He had allowed work to come first for far too long. It had taken something this catastrophic for him to finally see clearly. I won't lose you, buddy, Jake muttered under his breath, forcing the words through a tight throat. He couldn't let the doctors down either. He had to believe they could help Samuel. After what felt like an eternity, the room quieted. The medical team stepped back, allowing an exhausted breath to escape from Jake's lips. The doctor glanced over at him, her expression resolute yet weary. He is stable for now, she said. We'll need to monitor him closely, but we're moving him to pediatric intensive care where he'll receive specialized care. Jake nodded, processing her words while his heart quaked with uncertainty. Samuel was still there, still fighting. He could hear the hint of relief in the doctors' voices, but dread clawed at him like a shadow. As the staff prepared to transfer Samuel, Jake leaned over the bed, finally reaching out to grasp his son's small, cool hand. I'm right here, Sam. I'm not going anywhere. Remember that, he whispered, his heart throbbing with determination. A hint of a smile graced Samuel's lips, though it faded quickly. Yet it was enough to spark hope within Jake's heart. This was real. This fight was real. As they wheeled Samuel out of the room, Jake followed closely behind, glancing at his brother for support. Eric's expression mirrored the glimmer of cautious hope that flickered within Jake. Just as they reached the threshold of the pediatric ICU, Jake caught a look back at Samuel. As the nurses settled him onto the new bed, he whispered, Dad, what if the treatments don't work? The question hung in the air like a weight. Jake felt as though his heart might break under its pressure, and he paused, caught between wanting to shield his son from the truth and needing to be honest. The truth is, Sam, we're going to fight together. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a team, he promised, heart racing again, knowing how heavy those words carried. With each passing moment, the stakes seemed to grow higher, and he realized that the journey ahead would take every ounce of strength he had. Just then, a faint alarm echoed from the monitoring machines, jolting Jake's thoughts. His heart raced again, a fresh wave of adrenaline surging through him. What if this was just the beginning of an even bigger battle? Would he be strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? The dim light of the pediatric ICU flickered ominously, casting shadows on the walls as the machines around Samuel beeped rhythmically. The steady sounds of healthcare took on a haunting quality, underscoring Jake's thoughts that darted like frightened rabbits. He squeezed his son's hand gently, focusing on the warmth there, a tether to hope in an uncertain landscape. Dad? Samuel's voice barely rose above a whisper, but it made Jake's heart swell like a balloon ready to burst. I'm scared. Jake fought against the flood of emotions. His throat tightened, but he pushed the anguish down, forcing a smile. I know, buddy. But remember what we talked about. We're a team. Just like superheroes, he said, using the words they so often shared. You've got this. And I'm right here. Samuel nodded, his eyes heavy with fatigue. But within that weariness, Jake saw a spark. A bit of fight that reminded him of the days spent playing catch in the yard, laughter hanging in the air like perfume. Suddenly, the room felt a little less cold. Nurses moved with purpose around them, carefully monitoring the 4 lines, adjusting knobs, and whispering to each other as if sharing secrets. The hum of their activity kept trying to drown out Jake's own racing thoughts. He forced himself to breathe, to stay present. He couldn't let fear take him. Not now. Time seemed to stretch in that sterile room. Seconds felt like hours, and as Jake leaned in closer, he could feel the warmth radiating from Samuel's hand seep into him, a flicker of reassurance amid the storm. "You know, I was thinking," Samuel began slowly, his voice soft. "What if we could go to the lake this summer? Just like we always do?" The image of their summer trips came rushing back, those lazy afternoons spent fishing and building sandcastles. Jake's heart cracked open, that slice of normalcy warming him. "Absolutely, Sam. We'll get that boat out," he promised, sealing it with a solemn nod. "Just you wait." But as soon as the words left his mouth, he caught the look on his brother Eric's face. Jake's heart sank. Eric had been the rock, the voice of reason during this chaos. Yet, he wore a questioning frown, and Jake knew without needing to ask that not everything would be as simple as they hoped. The sounds of the machines began to warp into a haunting pattern again, and Jake's breath hitched as he observed the rising tension on the nurses' faces. One of them leaned over to whisper something to the doctor, and dread pooled in Jake's stomach. Was it too early to hope? Were they just going to cling to moments that might slip from their hands like sand? "Jake," Eric said softly, catching his brother's gaze. "I think we need to talk about what's happening. It's not just about hope." Jake felt the heat rising to his face, a mix of frustration and fear burning through him. They needed to focus on Samuel. This wasn't the time for uncertainties. But Eric's expression broke through Jake's resolve, exposing a truth they both dreaded. Then a nurse approached, her demeanor businesslike yet soft. "We're going to increase his medication and keep a closer watch. It's going to take some time, but we're doing everything we can." Jake's heart sank. Those words felt painfully reassuring yet so starkly vague. How long could they keep up the facade that everything would be okay? As she walked away, the weight of the room pressed down on him. What if I can't be enough for him? What if? Jake's voice trailed off as he squeezed Samuel's tiny hand tighter, unsure how to finish that thought. "Dad, I can feel you being scared." Samuel's eyes locked onto Jake's. "Can we still fight together?" Jake looked deep into his son's searching eyes. He saw a warrior there, a boy who was ready to take on the world, no matter how overwhelming it felt at that moment. "Always, buddy," he said. "We're in this together. No matter what." As Samuel drifted off to sleep, Jake's mind raced with every possibility ahead. He was ready for the long fight, but deep within, fear gnawed at him. What did fighting together truly mean if they faced the unthinkable? As silence enveloped the room, Jake made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover every truth they needed to face this together. And then, he would protect Samuel no matter the cost. But just then, the alarms blared, and the comm shattered. Jake's heart dropped. What now? The sudden blare of the alarms filled the room, a horrific symphony that stole the oxygen from Jake's lungs. He jerked his head toward the monitors, which were suddenly alive with urgent red lights and frantic beeping. The nurses sprang into action, their voices sharp and quick, weaving through the sterile air like arrows. "Code Blue!" one of them shouted, and Jake's stomach twisted. "Dad?" Samuel's eyes sprang open wide in panic. The boy clutched Jake's hand tighter, as though he could pull his father into the fray with him. "What's happening?" "Stay with me, Sam, okay? Just breathe," Jake stammered, his voice barely breaking through the chaos. He wasn't sure if he was trying to reassure Samuel or himself. He watched helplessly as the nurses moved with precision, each step choreographed to save his son. "Eric!" Jake called, his eyes darting to where his brother stood frozen, mouth agape. Moments passed in a blur, but time lost its meaning in the drown of the chaos. The world outside the hospital walls faded away, leaving only the echoing beats of the machines and the frantic voices of the medical team. "Get me the crash cart," another nurse shouted as they began to work on Samuel. They pulled the boy from the bed and placed him on a stretcher. Jake felt his heart shatter as he watched them move with such intensity, as if they were battling an invisible monster, one that threatened to take his son far away from him. "Please, God," Jake whispered, a plea bubbling up from the depths of his being. He had clung to hope, to the idea of summer trips and fishing boats. Could all that be ripped away in an instant? Panic gripped his heart like a vice as he struggled to break free from the terror closing in around him. "Sir," a nurse said, cutting through the overwhelming noise. Her voice was calm, professional. "You need to step back." Jake felt his legs buckle beneath him. "No, I can't leave him." He grabbed onto the edge of the stretcher, desperately trying to plant his feet firmly, a single anchor against the tide of chaos. Eric forced his way forward, placing a steady hand on Jake's shoulder. "We need to give them space. They're doing everything they can. We have to trust them." "Trust? How do you trust when everything's falling apart?" Jake's voice was a strangled whisper, tearing through the noise. He wanted to scream that this wasn't how it was supposed to be, that he wasn't ready for this. "I'm his father. I should be able to protect him." Eric's voice was low, full of urgency and authority. "Look around, man. They're trained for this. If you panic, it won't help Samuel. You need to be his rock right now. He needs you." In that moment, something inside Jake shifted. He took a shuddering breath, trying to channel his fear into something tangible. Samuel's small, brave face floated in his mind, full of hope and dreams, and he could almost hear the boy's voice saying, "We're a team." Jake stepped back, letting the nurses do what they had trained for. With each beeping alarm, he took a deep breath, focusing on being there, steady for Samuel. He placed his hands around his own throat, as if trying to squeeze away the tightness. As he stood there, watching the team move in crisis mode, tears stung his eyes. They were fighting for Samuel's life, and he had to believe they were winning. It was just a matter of believing, even while the world tilted on its axis. Suddenly, amid the chaos, he felt a shift, an inkling of hope, a reminder that they were not alone. They had each other, and despite the uncertainty, they would find a way through this storm. But as he clung to that fragile thread, another blood-curdling alarm pierced through the air, and Jake's resolve faltered once again. Could they pull through? He took a step forward, determined to be the father Samuel needed, but inside, a new fear began to bloom. What would happen if the outcome was different than they hoped? Where would that leave them? The chaos seemed to warp time. Each tick of the clock on the wall stretched into eternity, filled with the weight of silence between the blaring alarms. Jake's heart raced, hammered by panic and clinging to a thread of hope that felt thinner than air. The nurses were moving fast, but in his mind, every action felt like it was unfolding at a crawl. "Stay calm, Sam," he whispered again, even though his own voice trembled. Samuel's face, usually so full of life, was pale and drawn. The boy blinked at him, confusion mixed with fear clouding those bright eyes. It was a look that crippled Jake more than any alarm ever could. "Daddy," Samuel whimpered, reaching for him with a small, shaky hand. "I'm right here." Jake took his son's hand, wrapping his fingers around it with fierce determination. This small act grounded him, and he dared to believe that their connection could shield them from the horror engulfing them. But Jake couldn't shake the grip of terror. What if this was it? "Do you want me to tell you a story?" Jake said, forcing the words out for Samuel's sake. "Remember the one about the dragon who just wanted to be friends?" His son's eyes flickered as he fought against the fear that clawed at him. "The one who couldn't breathe fire?" "Yeah, that one. He was kind of like you, right? All he wanted was to make friends, but everyone was scared. Jake continued, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling as he spoke. The nurses moved around them, laser-focused on Samuel's condition, and yet their world felt isolated and suspended in time. "Did he find friends?" Samuel murmured, almost too quietly. "Of course he did. Sometimes you just have to show people who you really are." Jake squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of it. "And that dragon ended up saving the day. Remember?" The words hung in the air, charged with hope. Perhaps their bond, this unconditional love, could navigate them through this impossible moment. Just then, a crash cart rolled in, metal wheels squeaking against the tile. A flurry of hands descended over Samuel, instruments flashing, shadows flickering across Jake's terrified face. Panic gripped him anew, tightening its hold around his heart. He felt Eric gripping his shoulder tight, a tether in a storm. "Jake, breathe," Eric urged, his voice low and steady. "You're the bravest man I know. Remember, Sam needs that right now." Jake's breath hitched, but he nodded, trying to weave through the warring emotions. No matter what it took, he needed to maintain his strength. He needed Samuel to see their fight wasn't over, that they were still a team. As they continued to work on his son, Jake contemplated the unthinkable. If he lost Samuel, what would be left of him? The summer trips, the little fishing boats, they weren't just dreams, they were a life he lived for. The idea of being dashed against the rocks of despair felt unbearable. Suddenly, one of the nurses shouted, "Clear." And another nurse said in a firm voice, "Shocking now." The current surged through Samuel's body, and for a moment, time froze. Jake couldn't breathe. Each second dragged like lead as silence enveloped him, waiting to see if his son would respond. Would he pull through? Then, a weak cry broke through the tension. Samuel's small form jerked, and for the briefest moment, Jake felt the world tilt in a different direction. Relief washed through him, but doubt lingered in the shadows of his heart. What would come next? How hard would the journey be? "Dad," the small voice called, shaky but persistent. Jake's heart soared. "I'm right here, buddy." But just as the glimmer of relief danced through him like sunlight, the alarms blared louder, a stark reminder that the fight was far from over. What lay in store next would test not only Samuel's courage but their entire family. Jake leaned closer, eyes locked on Samuel's. "We're going to get through this, I promise. I'm not going anywhere." As the team surged to his son's side, Jake's resolve crystallized. This was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. Would they emerge together, or would the scars of this night haunt them forever? The room buzzed with activity as the nurses swiftly moved, their faces set in determination. Jake felt a tightness form in his throat as he watched them work over Samuel. Each beep and alarm echoed in his ears, a reminder that this was a race against time. But now, Samuel was awake, there was a flicker of life amidst the chaos, and that spark fueled Jake's hope. "Sam, can you hear me?" "Just keep hanging in there, buddy," Jake said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Samuel's eyes fluttered open wider, struggling to focus on his father's face. There was fear still, but now there was an unspoken question behind those bright eyes. Am I going to be okay? The seconds slipped into minutes as nurses shifted equipment and adjusted IVs. Jake leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from Samuel's forehead, feeling both relief and fear. "I'm right here with you, always," he whispered, fighting the overwhelming emotions that threatened to break free. "Daddy." Samuel's voice was small, but the urgency tinged his words. "Am I sick?" Jake inhaled sharply. What could he say? How could he explain the truth without shattering the fragile hope they had clung to? "No, buddy. You're a fighter. Remember that dragon? He always found a way to be brave, just like you. Like when he learned he could fly." Samuel's brow furrowed intently. The connection to the story calmed Jake momentarily. In the depths of darkness, his son still sought comfort in tales of courage. Exactly. Just like you. You'll be soaring in no time. They're taking care of you now, Jake assured him, holding his son's hand even tighter. Suddenly, another nurse moved in and called out, "We need to keep his vitals stable." Stat. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted back into a whirlwind of urgency. Jake's heart sank, each shout of "clear" or "let us go" adding weight to the air. He couldn't help but fixate on the monitors. Every rise and fall of the numbers danced like his hopes and fears. They were in this fight together, but he was terrified of what might happen next. With each passing moment, the pressure in the room was suffocating. Jake sensed Eric watching him closely, his own worry mirrored in his eyes. "You're doing great, Jake. Just keep talking to him," Eric encouraged softly, offering a nod of solidarity. At that moment, the world outside felt impossibly distant. All that mattered was Samuel and the fight for his life. Jake could feel exhaustion creeping up, but he pushed it down. "Sam, remember when we went to the lake? You caught that huge fish? You're the best fisherman ever." Samuel's face brightened momentarily, a flicker of a smile breaking through. "I caught it and I let it go," he murmured, trying to hold on to the conversation amid the chaos. "Because you knew it deserved to swim free," Jake replied, his voice breaking slightly. "That's what we're going to do. We're going to swim free, together. One step at a time." The machines beeped steadily now, a testament to the stability they desperately hoped for. But lurking underneath that steadiness, Jake could feel a different kind of tension building. They were still on shaky ground, and he had to be ready. As the hours rolled by, Jake watched as Samuel slowly fell back to a fragile calm, the nurses shuffling about him like vigilant guardians. Through it all, he realized their battle wasn't just against this illness. It was a fight for every moment they shared and every memory they had yet to make. "Sam," he finally said, taking a breath to steady himself, "no matter what happens tonight, just remember I will always fight for you." The assurance sank deep into him, a promise he couldn't let go of. With that resolve solidifying, Jake knew they were on the edge of an unknown journey. But would that journey lead them to healing or heartbreak? Just as the team began to finalize the equipment, another nurse entered, her expression grave. "We need to discuss the next steps about Samuel's treatment." Jake's heart skipped a beat, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. What were they preparing to face? And would Sam's bravery hold strong against all that lay ahead? The tension in the room thickened as the doctor spoke, but Jake held tight to Samuel's hand, feeling the pulse of hope coursing through their connection. "Mr. Donovan," she began, her tone serious but gentle, "we need to consider the possibility of specialized treatment, but there are risks involved." Jake's heart raced. Risks? The word cut deep, sharp as a knife. He looked at Samuel, whose small face was streaked with worry but still glimmered with courage. "You're going to be okay, Sam," he pushed out through clenched teeth, determination igniting in his gut. "But Dad, what if?" Samuel's eyes searched Jake, pleading for reassurance. Sinking into the chair beside the bed, Jake felt the weight of the world rest on his shoulders. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. We will fight this together, I promise." Those words felt inadequate but were all he could muster in the face of looming uncertainty. The doctor continued explaining the details. "This treatment has shown promise, but we need your consent. It may be uncomfortable and the road ahead is long." In the stillness, Jake absorbed every word, every possibility. He imagined tomorrow's sunrise at the lake, splashes of laughter, and endless hours fishing. "We'll do it," Jake declared. "Whatever it takes." Samuel's gaze softened, and in his eyes, a flicker of trust ignited. "You really mean it?" "Absolutely," Jake said firmly, squeezing his son's hand. Eric stepped closer, nodding in support. "We're all in this together. No one is going anywhere." A surge of warmth flooded Jake's chest. Family, once a distant thought, now stood beside him, ready to face the storm. The doctor nodded, her professionalism unyielding. All right, we'll start the preparations immediately. But remember, the journey ahead will require patience. Jake took a deep breath, his heart swelling with resolve. They had faced the unthinkable, but it was time to embrace hope. We can do this, Sam. You are my strongest warrior. As bright light from the hallway poured into the room, it illuminated Samuel's face, casting away some of the shadows. I'm scared, Dad, Samuel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I know. And it's okay to be scared. But you are not alone. Jake's heart surged with love, overpowering the fear that once gripped him. Can we do the dragon story again? Samuel asked, a bold smile creeping onto his face. Yes. The dragon who learns to fly. Jake laughed, feeling an unfamiliar lightness cascading over him. As they began the poignant retelling of the tale, something shifted in the air. With each word, each giggle, the unbearable weight of dread transformed into a sense of possibility. Jake leaned in, his voice growing softer with every phrase, sharing memories interwoven with laughter. Hours melted away, and as night turned to dawn, the noise around them faded into a background hum. They found solace in their shared dreams of recovery and adventure, an unbreakable bond knitting them closer together. Days passed, marked by treatments and tests, but they leaned on one another, fighting back feelings of dread that often threatened to surface. Samuel's courage radiated brightly, inspiring Jake to forge deeper connections, reaching out to Eric, reviving family ties once frayed by Jake's ambition. Each day brought small victories, laughter echoed in the sterile halls. Eric joined them, recounting fond bakery memories and fishing trips they shared as children. Jake couldn't believe how healing those simple stories were, mending the loose stitches of their relationship. Together, Jake said one morning, looking at Samuel and Eric, we'll make new memories, even better ones. And as the days turned into weeks, a breakthrough arrived. Tests showed improvement. Samuel was stabilizing. In those moments, Jake reveled in the newfound purpose that enveloped him. Not just about success and wealth, but creating moments that mattered. Let us start planning our trip to the lake, he proposed one afternoon, finding comfort in the notion of fishing together. Samuel smiled brightly, eyes sparkling like the fresh waters in his imagination. Can we bring popcorn? Jake burst into laughter, feeling light. Only if you promise to keep your line cast and help me catch the biggest fish. And with those plans, the horizon began to glow with promise. Jake learned the value of presence, the blessing of connection, and the power of unconditional love. United, they had turned a harrowing chapter into one defined by resilience and growth. As the hospital walls slowly faded behind them, their journey marked not the end of the storm, but the dawn of a new beginning. For every challenge they faced, they would come together, stronger than before. A family forged anew, bound not only by blood but by unwavering love. And as Jake watched Samuel, fully awake and radiant, his heart swelled with gratitude. The toughest battles had brought their truest selves into the light, igniting a desire beyond success, the desire to cherish every breath, every laugh, and every glorious moment spent together. Sometimes, the greatest riches are found not in numbers, but in the embrace of family, the moments shared, and the memories forged every day. Now, it was time for them to go beyond the hospital, beyond the tests, and step into life together again. Do you see this? There are transformations here, real, powerful moments. Don't leave without acknowledging the journey. You need to subscribe now to witness these incredible stories unfold. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button and feed the algorithm. Comment right now on your reactions. What did this journey mean to you? And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation and understand the power of family.